I was thinking, let's talk about development because Tony said that condos were the first real irreversible change that he saw.
Yeah,
And what's interesting is my 14 years in Aspen were possible because my parents owning condos like the Alps, Gant, Lift One, and the
yeah.
many others. So, can you speak to some of the new development? I mean, I remember before the big development was, I guess it was the Ritz-Carlton, and there was a
Yeah,
big hole in Aspen Mountain for like 3 or 4 years, I remember
yeah,
when we were there. It
yeah.
took a long time for them to get the final funds to finish that project. I don't know if it was the Ritz-Carlton or whatever, but
It was. It was indeed the Ritz-Carlton.
okay, so
When did it go to the luxury collection? And there was another one too. Was that the other
Well,
hole in the
it
ground?
it started out as the Ritz-Carlton, and I think Hadid was behind that, and he built it for some astronomical price, and it took forever to get finished. And then by the time it was finished, there was so much debt on it, and the room rental rates apparently weren't high enough that it failed. And so I heard it sold for 50 cents on the dollar, and then it became whatever it is now. The
isn't it the Ritz-Carlton?
No, it's not the Ritz-Carlton. Oh, are you talking about Highlands, or you're talking about the one in Aspen?
Yeah, the Aspen Mountain one.
Yeah, it's not the Ritz-Carlton anymore. It's the, I don't know, God, what is it? The Regency, or
Oh
I
yeah,
can't.
That
right.
was it.
Yeah.
Regency.
Yeah. So then they made it work, and now it's of course very successful, and it's a beautiful hotel, and everybody wants to go there. And so that, yeah.
Well, speaking of Hadid, is that's foreign influence and foreign funding coming in, and so
Yeah.
that's sort of what happened with the Gorsuch House.
Oh, it is what eventually happened to Gorsuch House. That's such an interesting story for so many reasons. But Gorsuch bought the option to buy that 1 acre of land at the bottom of 1A, and I think it was around reported to be about $10 million is what he paid for it. And then the Swedish came in and bought it for $78 million. And that was 3 months after Gorsuch had exercised the option at $10 million. And so, Gorsuch did a lot of work on that, got all the approvals and the entitlements in place so it was ready to go. And he pretty much did that by just making friends with the townspeople and slapping a lot of backs and shaking a lot of hands and telling everybody he was going to be in that thing till the end, and he was going to run it for the locals and have local specials at the bars there and at the shops, and and it's a huge development. I mean, that's the biggest development probably there ever will be in Aspen once they get it off the ground. It's the whole 1A side of the mountain. But that was a very contentious issue, and it went to the vote, and I think it passed by 14 votes. So if 7 people changed their minds, we would not have that big development pending there. We wouldn't be dealing with a Swedish investor.
Yes, the
and and so that became something that people were really passionate about. And then when Swedish investment came in and bought that acre of land for $78 million, and that really set people off, because people thought Gorsuch had made all these promises to the people of Aspen, and then he was cashing out. And I think that was really a PR mistake by Jeff Gorsuch, the way he handled that. And the way he handled it is what he didn't say anything, and he let Rick Carroll at the Aspen Times discover the purchase in the records at the courthouse, which is, Rick is a great reporter, and that's just, I'm sure, a routine thing he does is check the records. So Rick discovered that Jeff Gorsuch and his group had sold that $10 million piece of land for $78 million, and of course that raised a lot of eyebrows and a lot of questions. So and they haven't done anything on the project yet. As far as breaking ground. So it's still kind of mysterious, and it's sort of simmering in the background all the time.
Well, also, here's my question about that too, because, Portland, we have downtown Portland, and I don't know if you know this, but way back in the day, is it when they say Shanghai, you've been Shanghai, that came from Portland. And what that was the ships would come into the dock up on the river, And when they would dock, they had underground tunnels because there was so much rain coming that they wanted to get stuff to the stores. So they would go through the tunnels from the ships with all the supplies and for the stores and stuff, and go through the tunnels to bring it up into the stores and stuff. Well, those tunnels ended up getting used to replenish the ship hands with big, strong loggers. So they would hit them in a bar, get them doped, a collapsible chair would fall down, and they'd go down into the underground, and then they'd be sort of held there. And so there's sort of this underground tunnel system that's like 5 tunnels deep in some places underneath Portland. So as they started to develop Portland, they started to find that out. And so there were several buildings that took almost 2 years to build, because as they would punch through one layer, it would sink, and then they would build and start to build, and then they would sink again through another layer.
Wow.
So I know that Aspen Mountain is basically Swiss cheese, and that they themselves also have tunnels that go to the city market, to Tom's Market, to the post office, all that stuff. So is that kind of, and I remember one time when there was runoff that went all the way down some of those tunnels and filled all the way up with water, and the whole side of the mountain up there was starting to slide, and there was a big worry of whether it was going to come crash through the whole town. So when you talk about building and spending that kind of money, is that situation ever considered in there, or is that just swept under the carpet and nobody really talks about that?
Well, I think Chris or Andy, well, both of you, I remember when there was the big threat about the mudslide coming down the 1A side of the mountain, and they actually closed off half the town in the spring one year because they were that worried about that.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Down. Yeah. So I think they went up there with engineers and construction crews, and I think they've got that land pretty well stabilized. So I don't believe that's well, it's always probably a threat. You can't underestimate Mother Nature, but I think they're satisfied that it's not an immediate threat anyways, and that they've fixed that problem. So my guess that the real problem with the 1A development stalled now is just money. It seems to me that they overpaid for that piece of land tremendously. Yeah. And I think they underestimated the construction costs because, they've got to dig into that rock and that unstable land that you mentioned. And I think they did not consider how expensive that's going to be. And so there's been a lot of silence about that, and nobody in town knows what's going on with that. And there are rumors that they'd have to tear out Lift 1A and close that side of the mountain, lift service to that side of the mountain for 3 years while construction goes on. So it's a mess. I would guess now if the people of Aspen were to vote on it again, I think it would be resoundingly a no vote on that. So it's kind of a bummer that we're stuck with this project, and you can't turn the pages back, really.
Well, an Aspen dilemma then would be if they shut that side of the mountain down for 3 years, the World Cup would be gone. I mean, you wouldn't. Yeah,
for 3 years, for sure, for sure. And ironically, they told us that, we'd never see another World Cup race here unless the voters approved that project. And we've had, the World Cup finale there once, and 3 World Cup races, if my count is correct, since they told us that, and since the thing was approved. So that was just all nonsense and BS. And, it's kind of crazy.